All right. Welcome to Intune Training, the place to learn how to use Microsoft Intune, the Steve and Adam show, with no Adam.
Hi. Oh,
again.
Hi, Adam.
Wonder where that guy's gone.
One day you'll join us again.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. How are you, Steve?
Pretty damn good, Ben. How about yourself?
I am not bad at all on this lovely Sunday. I don't know. Days mean nothing.
It's been 10 weeks, and
it's been a time. All right. Anyway,
not what we're here to talk about.
It's not what we're here to talk about. Steve's dragged me away from my staycation to talk about computer things. So, Steve, what are we talking about today?
So today's session, we're going to talk about something that I think is pretty awesome. It's very geeky and it's not very sexy, let's be honest. It's all about USB removable media controls. So this is around sitting there and having some, they're not DLP rules, but they're DLP controls, because DLP is typically going to be based upon the heuristics of the file. This is controlling how you use it and how you have access to files onto your USB media. So I know when I was a consultant, and I'm sure you have had this conversation before, Ben, where you walk in there and the customer goes, I have to block all USB media, blanket statement, because I need to hit compliance and everything associated with it.
Yeah, I certainly have.
And while that's not incorrect, most compliance statements are, well, we need to stop data leaving the network via USB media.
In an uncontrolled way.
That's correct. Unauthorized.
Unauthorized, yeah. Sure.
And then the next step on that is we also want to stop viruses being able to be executed automatically when plugged into computers with the execute command. So what Microsoft's brought out is the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Device Control Removal Storage Access Control. And this is where we now have the ability to sit there and say, you're allowed to do this or you're not allowed to do this. And it's broken down into read, write, execute, and a mixture of all of those. Cool. So, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And I'm going to preface this up front and say this doesn't replace your DLP solution. This is complementary to your DLP solution. And
for the people that love acronyms, DLP is data loss prevention.
That's correct.
I'm sure everyone knows, but just for the couple of people that don't, that's what we're talking about. But specifically stating that the solution that we're going to look into today is not data loss protection. It is a way to control what you can and can't do with USB devices that get plugged into your devices.
Correct.
Seems pretty simple.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here then.
Yeah, sure. While you're doing that, Steve, I guess, so a couple of the questions that I've got for you. So right now, if I were to maybe not looking into Intune stuff, but like, how would I go about doing this right now? Like, what are the solutions that exist today that we can leverage?
So the existing solution that exists today, well, this solution obviously exists today.
Sure.
But more the existing solutions that were in place and available before this tended to be very heavy-handed. It would be blocking USB.
Right.
And by blocking USB, that would also block keyboards, mice, screens, docking stations, and basically go, hey, look, no, you're not allowed to have that there. So think of you've got a docking station that has a virtual drive on there with its drivers. That would be just blocked.
Sure.
And things like that. So while it served a purpose and it works quite well, it's got a lot of administrative overhead.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's not auditable. To me, it's the equivalent of group policy.
Yeah.
Compared to Intune CSP policies.
Sure.
It's hit and hope. We don't have reporting. We don't have auditability. We just know that I put a rule out there to say you're not allowed to do this.
Yeah.
And I can only confirm by plugging it in and seeing that it's blocked.
For sure. And I mean, I've definitely run into that situation before where, the worst possible scenario is that all of a sudden all peripherals do not work because someone didn't finesse the solution a little bit.
Correct.
and then all of a sudden your support calls go through the roof. No one can do their work, and then you're in a little bit of trouble. So okay, so yes, I've seen those solutions put out. Way more often than I like to admit. So in that case, then how does this solution work? What are we doing with it today?
Yep. So how this solution works is it's all built into the Defender engine. Mm-hmm. So the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint engine, you need to have certain versions. Here's the version SKUs where it steps through each of those scenarios. The good news is it doesn't technically need you to have Defender as your primary AV product.
Okay.
So if you've disabled that, and I'm going to put an asterisk there, it all depends on how it's been disabled and everything associated.
Yeah.
But so long as you're getting the security framework updates from Microsoft,
yeah,
it will go and have these components added in there and allow you to do this. So how you confirm that is you go and run that git mp computer status. And you know what? I'm going to quickly do that on this computer because I only built it this morning.
Yeah, sure.
And we're going to just have a quick look to see what version we have on here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just thinking. And we can see here that it's running 4.18.2107. So it's the latest version.
Yeah, nice.
And you'll see that it adds support for Windows portable devices.
So this is a relatively new solution.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool.
This is super new.
Yeah, nice.
There is still, I've been led to believe that there's still work being done on it. Mm-hmm. And additional components will be added to it.
Yep.
But what this gives you is the flexibility and the ability to start that journey to go, hey, let's start investigating this and how it works.
Yeah, cool.
So one thing I want to call out is that Windows portable device, that there is for your mobile phones. So your iPhone and Android devices actually load into Windows as a Windows portable device, and there's a separate command for that, which we'll go into in this one. Otherwise, we'll provide the link below.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, this document that we're running through, we'll put a link there.
Yep.
Any documentation, it just goes without saying, we'll provide links for.
Definitely.
Okay, so all right, so this is obviously what we're essentially doing is we're configuring Defender to sort of handle this sort of stuff. And without seeing this before, I'm assuming we're just using Intune to deploy the profile to essentially Intune tells Defender, hey, we want to configure this way. Please do the thing.
That's correct. So that's exactly what we're using here. Is think of it the same as what you would do to configure any part of Defender from Intune. We're just sitting there and pushing down our policies. So today it's all using CSP, and you can do that with all of the Defender components.
Nice.
And yeah, so it works quite well.
Nice. Let's get into it, dude.
Yeah, and look, a couple of things that we'll quickly step through. While I don't really like talking through the docs pages and stepping through, in this scenario, it's going to make a good example of what we're doing, and then we can go in and actually see how it all works.
Yeah.
Because it's quirky in a good way, in a really good way. So the first one that I'm going to call out around the property for the XML, the file that we're going to create, I've got sample files, so you don't have to sit there watching me fat finger everything, is the group ID. And if I say group ID to you, Ben, what do you think I'm talking about?
I think you're talking about any kind of GUID, but like it could be a security group ID, it could be anything, but generally like it's objects and policies within Intune are all defined by an ID.
Yep.
I'm assuming that's the same thing.
So most people, when I talk to them, they'll sit there and go, well, that's my AAD group ID.
Sure.
And that's not what it actually is.
Sure.
The group ID is something that we're defining inside the policy itself.
Yeah. It's a unique ID for the thing we're deploying.
Yeah. So it's a unique ID for the descriptor.
Sure.
And we'll explain that a little bit more once we get into the samples. But this is where we're sitting there and defining that group in the construct of Defender. From there, we then go and define what's in the group. And these are the parameters that you can use the top level here, so primary ID, which we're going to be using removable media devices in our scenario. So
you don't want to do CD-ROM devices?
I don't have anything I could demo with.
That's okay. That's fine. So while we're looking at this, I do just want to point out that what we're doing here is we're building the policy from scratch. So there's at the moment there's no native, nice, shiny way to do this from the Intune portal. So just calling that out. This is all custom at the moment, but it does show you how much control you have over this. The majority of the data that we're actually looking at here is pretty much just to define what the object is. And you can get most of this information from the device manager. All the information from the device manager. Yeah.
Look, the one that you probably don't, and I know I had that very, very definitive term, but is that primary ID. But that's just a display name. Everything else is in device manager for the object itself.
Yeah.
So the cool ones here, device path ID, which we'll be using, and we'll talk more about when we go into it further. But we also have our traditional vendor ID and PID, as well as serial number, friendly name, hardware, and device. So this is where you can sit there and go, I want to whitelist an explicit brand of USB, or I want to whitelist an explicit USB, / I want to block an explicit USB.
That's cool.
Which I think is just awesome, right?
Well, I mean, that creates that scenario where your hardware distribution team just have a bucket of USBs, and they're all the same brand. And whenever anyone comes up and says, "Hey, I need portable storage," you just chuck them one of those. You don't need to configure it. It's just approved, or it's allowed.
Yeah. And look, in that scenario or in that use case, the security is to a point, because then there's nothing stopping any of your staff going and purchasing a device of that make and model and accessing it.
For sure.
And that's where using the serial number / instance path ID gives you that further granularity, but it puts a huge administrative overhead over the top of it.
Yeah, asset management of USB devices sounds like a lovely job that I am glad that I do not do.
Yes. It's one of these things that I would strongly suggest to refrain from.
Yeah, but you could do it if
there are organizations that I know that are needing to do it.
If you don't like your asset management team, you can do this.
Yeah. So that's one policy that we're going to be creating, or one OMA-URI setting that we're going to create, which is going to be that group. And we'll see it here as that removable storage group. Yep. And then the second one that we're creating is the access policy. And this is where we define what the policy ID is going to be, what is included. So this is where it references to the group IDs or the group GUIDs, along with the exclude ID list. Then the next step, and this is the important part, we're going to sit there and have that entry ID, and we're going to say, what are we doing? Are we auditing or are we enforcing?
Yeah, sure.
So auditing is just as important as enforcement, as it gives you the ability to sit there and plan and say, if I turn this on, will I break stuff?
And this is,
the answer is yes.
100%. But like, this is the sort of thing that I think you and I really, really champion in both of our jobs, where the idea is that turn all this stuff on, but don't start enforcing it yet. Just turn it on, see what happens, see what data you start getting back. And then from there, you can start lighting it up as enabled for certain departments or certain groups, to start pilot testing this sort of stuff. Exactly. This way that you can actually start rolling out the shiny new things without actually impacting the end users in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So the next part here is the SID and computer SID. So you can actually lock this down to an Active Directory object SID.
What's Active Directory again? Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. What I'm going to stress is you can, but please don't, because there's better ways to control it using the Intune assignment rules. So this is where you can sit there and say, I'm going to have one rule for one group of people and another rule for another group of people.
Yeah.
And control it at the Intune level, because it's reportable and you don't have to make changes to the policies that get deployed out to every computer constantly.
Yeah, this is where you don't have to have a million different policies. You can just have one blanket one and then deploy it to specific groups, instead of having, well, this policy is for Steve's computer because I don't trust him. It
I wouldn't
makes
trust him either.
Very good. But yeah, so like you have a lot of granularity and a lot of detailed control in this. The point is to show a little bit of restraint with the way that you develop the solution.
Exactly. And the thing is, this is more geared towards if you're using group policy.
Yeah, for sure.
SID and computer SID, because it's designed for Active Directory and it can be deployed out. And there's explanations on how that works down in the document, but we're not going to go into that.
No,
basically, we're going to finish off.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say exactly what you said around this is designed for group policy. This is why currently the solution that we're doing is a manual process. We're creating an OMA policy. We're going to be deploying it all out. That's why we need to do it this way, because it was designed specifically for group policy. We're now shoehorning it into Intune. So just because these settings and parameters exist does not mean that you should use them in this modern state. It's just that they are there because this is a solution that has not been built specifically for what we're doing.
It's been built for all scenarios.
Yeah, exactly.
Simple, right?
Yeah.
So then the options and the access mask are the ones that we're going to spend a little bit more time on. But this is where we sit there and define what we're actually going to do. So the options go all the way from do nothing to show event and send show notification and send event. And the important thing to note, and I glossed over this at the start, and I'm going to have people phase out for a second because I'm going to talk about licensing. You need a 3 license or an E3 license to leverage this, because you need to have the Intune policies to be able to deploy it out to the Defender. But for reporting, you need to have that E5 licensing.
That makes sense.
To capture that event when it is sent, you need to have the E5 license to access the Defender ATP portal or Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. Yes, marketing, I got it right this time.
Very good. Checks in the mail.
Exactly. And then the last one that we're going to define is that access mask. And this is where we define what we're going to be allowing or disallowing. And it's that standard ACL scenario where it's read, write, and execute. Obviously, we don't have full control because full control is read, write, and execute. It just doesn't have the pretty labels. So that's the simple stuff, right? Well, not so much simple, but that's the stuff we're going to talk about. Then down here, obviously, there's some scenarios. I'm not going to go into those, but basically what we're following is scenario 1. But we're going to step through it because we've already copied it and got it referenced in our environment. So I'm going to step over here to my Visual Studio Code where I have some XML files already pre-created.
XML,
so yes, I completely agree, but that's the format we have. So that's the format we're going to work with. So I'm going to start off at the all device policy or all device group, and then we're going to step across into how we're restricting it down. And then the last part that we're going to step into is how we pull it all together. If you're going to do this, I highly recommend taking the time to do it into Visual Studio Code, create the XML files there. There are samples available on the docs page that you'll see, and go through that and make sure that it works in here, because you can get yourself into a tangle very rapidly if you don't.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to start off, we've got our group ID here, and that GUID, you just go to PowerShell, new dash GUID, capture the GUID.
VS Code as well.
You can too.
And I just had a little bit of a way to explain this while you were talking about it. So these group policies that we're creating.
Group policies.
Yeah. We're creating an identifiable group of things, right? So think of this, if you will, as a filter. So we're literally filtering out exactly what we want to include in this policy. So it's just a way that I could sort of make this make more sense to me. We're literally creating a filter to sort of capture certain things, and then we're going to apply those ACLs to it.
That's correct.
Sweet.
And if you want to look at it from a config manager lens, this is defining your collection.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is the query that creates your collection that is based upon hardware information, not anything else.
Yeah.
So in here, we've got our group ID and we're sitting there. So we'll start off with the group ID. We have our GUID.
Yep.
It links across to the OMA-URI that we're going to have to create later. From there, we have our primary ID, which we're saying is a removable media device. So that's any USB keys.
Sure. This is where we could have potentially also done CD-ROM, for example, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. So then we'll step across into the USB whitelisting, because this is actually probably more interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just going to quickly double check something here to make sure I have the right label. Yep, it's device ID. Yeah, it's instance path ID. That's why I've been having issues. So if we go and change this to instance path ID, so device ID would only be the first part of it. We're using instance path ID because what that instance path ID is, and I'll quickly show you how we get that, is if we go to device manager. So to get there, I right-clicked on start and device manager, and then I go to disk drives. You'll see here I have two USB keys attached, and I know that it is the dual drive because here it is here, prod dual drive. So if we double click on that and we go to details, and then we go to device instance path, what you'll see here is a very long string that looks a lot like this one, except for the fact that the ampersands are replaced with ampersand, amp, semicolon.
And that was put as a note on the docs page as well.
Correct.
You just need to replace that.
Yeah. So, and the reason for that is because it needs to be escaped in XML. Yep. XML doesn't handle ampersands all that well. So what this actually is what this string is a defining that it's a USB storage disk from vendor SanDisk.
And then the
what the
product
model
name
is with the revision version. And then this bit here, that's the really interesting part. That's the serial number of the key.
Okay.
That serial number of the key means that only that explicit device can be used, not anything else in the environment. So
if we were to remove that serial number and just use up to revision, essentially what that would mean is that we are filtering for any device that is from SanDisk that has got that product name and it is revision 1.
Yes, but it would have to be as device ID, not as
instance path, right? Because instance path is the entire chain.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So we've now defined this USB key, which is my key here, this one here. That allows me to plug that in and do what I need to do for the demo.
Cool.
So I'm just going to close that out. So we have that USB key set up, and now we're going to go and step across to the policy, which is this one. And we're sitting here and saying, include this GUID.
Yep. Which is the one that we set up in the,
the first one, the any media, EC6.
Yep.
So EC6. Yep. And then we're excluding, so if it's in this group, allow or ignore the rule.
Gotcha.
So that's the 22C, and if we double check, 22C. Cool. So then the last part that we're stepping through is defining what we're going to allow, which is we're saying it's a deny type with an option of 1. So what does option 1 mean? Let's go and have a quick look. Option 1 is show notification. Cool. So we're going to deny with show notification. Yep, that's fine. And then we go and look at our access mask. And if we go and look over here, our access mask is 6. And that 6 is we're going to deny, write, and execute. So what that explicitly means is we are only allowing read on that device, period. So all devices get read, and my special USB key gets read, write, execute. Simple, right?
Yeah.
So now when we step across, we now need to build out the OMA-URIs. So for me, I'm a stickler for trying to keep track of everything in this type of scenario, and it gets very confusing very quickly. and what we're needing to have is 3 separate OMA policies for each of the configurations that we upload as XML files.
Sure.
The thing to note here is you have policy groups. So these are the 2 groups that we're creating for any.
Yep. And then we have that rule.
And then we have that rule, right? And you'll note that the end of it is different. It's group data, rule data, right? Simple stuff. And then you'll see that these GUIDs here match the same as what we're using inside the policy XML.
Sure.
For each of the definitions. And the %7D is the curly brace for the right-hand side. %7B is the curly brace for the left-hand side.
Sweet.
So that's how you need to format it so it can be published up into Intune. So now let's go and publish it to Intune. It's taken us all this time to get there, but I think it's been well worth spending the time to explain it. So we're going to create our configuration profile, and we're going to select Windows 10 and later, and then here we select templates, and we are going to do a custom.
Cool.
Custom is where it allows us to define explicit OMA-URIs as needed. So we're going to go here, and we're going to go Intune. USB, cool. As an example, right? And then we're going to go next, and we're going to add our OMA-URIs. So let's just start off and go over here, and we're going to copy this one, give it a name, so it's any media, paste it in, and then we're going to go and select string XML file.
And we're going to upload that file, yeah.
Correct. And if we go to our unallowed, because I put it in there, and you'll see here we have any. There's our file, and we're going to save that up. Now we're going to add. We're going to call this allowed media. And we're going to grab that same command, Control-C, Control-V, XML,
like that.
Allow. Yep. And then the last one we're going to add is our rule data. So we copy that, and we're going to paste that there. We're going to call this allow read. And we're going to select our XML string. And we're going to select, that's a good question because I have labeled them incorrectly. It is the copy that we want to grab.
Cool.
And we're going to save that. We're going to go next. We're going to go next. And here we do our standard assignment. And this is where highly recommend doing it to device, not user. It's going to make your life a lot easier. In our scenario, though, I don't know if we have a device group, so I'm just going to, you know what?
Hit all devices for the test.
That's what I was going to do.
Very good.
And then obviously you can do filters if you wanted to exclude people. We've got our applicability rules, which is fine, and create. So now that's going to apply to my complaint computer here, which is the one we're working on. What I should be able to do is go to company portal. Sure, let's close that out and do the right way, which is right click, more. Oh, I don't have sync.
Now let's do this one, Steve. There is no right or wrong way to force a device to resync. You can reboot the computer. You can go into service and kill the service if you have access to do that. You can go into company portal and you can go into the settings and do it that way. There's a million different ways to do this.
Yes.
Whatever way works for you, works for you.
What I was hoping to see is this sync this device. Because I hadn't opened company portal previously, I was hoping to be able to go right click here on company portal and use the task sync this device, because that will force the computer to do the sync.
Yep.
It's just a nice little scenario.
Yep.
We're just waiting for this to sync through. Once it's completed, we'll then go and look in the registry and make sure that the policy is actually applied correctly. And the reason why you don't need to go into the registry, this is more us just wanting to make sure things work as expected when we go and do this.
And also, let's face it, we run a YouTube channel about this stuff. We're huge nerds. So yeah, we're going to go into the registry so that you guys don't have to.
So here's the registry. We're bringing up regedit, going to go yes. The path, which we'll put below and all of that, is going to be local machine software policies, Microsoft Windows Defender Policy Manager. And in here, because I know Ben's going to ask, what does it actually look like?
Is it literally just the XML?
Sort of. It is, but it actually consolidates it using the policy groups.
Yeah, sure.
So puts it into a single one. But you can't do that yourself. You need to do it via the engine before you think, oh, what I'll do is, no, don't. And that's the same here with the policy rules as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So look, it's also worth pointing out that the path that this stuff gets dumped into should be fairly common or understood by most of you who have done group policies. It's literally the group policy endpoint, because what we're doing is creating a group policy without group policy orchestrating the delivery of it. We're leveraging Intune and OMA-URI policies.
And the WMI bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
From OMA-URI to group policy.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yes. So what that means is now I'm going to quickly unplug my USB keys, and I'm going to now plug in my one that I shouldn't be allowed to save to. And I'm going to plug that in, and you'll see straight away my organization is blocking write and execute to that device.
Yeah, that's cool.
I get a notification saying you're not allowed to do that. If I now go over here to my VS Code, which is saved on that USB key, I'm just going to hit enter, and I'm going to try and save that. And it's going to say, nah, not allowed to do that. Sorry.
That's so good. Now, you didn't set this policy up to leave an event in the event log, but that's definitely something that you can do as well.
That's correct. And the event into the event log and event up into Defender ATP is all detailed in the docs page that you'll be able to go and look at.
That's awesome. So look, I can see very real scenarios where this is used specifically just to block execute, so that people can save and share content and sort of do any of that naughty data leakage as much as their heart's content, but they can't run files, so they can't bring in the things, open it up and execute that content, because that's a risk.
Exactly. So the other thing that I want to call out, Ben, is when you go to Windows Explorer and you right click, and typically you've got that new, it's not there.
Yeah, because
I can't paste.
That's cool. So
it's contextually aware in the OS of what you have access to on that USB key.
Okay.
So what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to grab my other USB key that's allowed.
Yep.
And I'm going to plug that in. And you'll see it saying allowed. I didn't get the notification to say it's blocked or anything like that.
Yeah.
If I go to Windows Explorer and go to my allowed folder, and I want to go new, and I can create a new folder. And I can run cmtrace, not a problem at all.
We should have set that to not execute to see that, but that's cool.
Yeah. Well, what I should have done is put cmtrace on here, but I forgot.
Yeah. That's okay. That's totally fine. I think this is a really good demo. It's shown
what we.
Go for it.
This and go save as.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go here and we're going to save.
Yeah.
And it's just saved without a problem. Yeah,
that's really good. So, I mean, aside from our, getting nerdy over the registry and explaining the difference between group policy and WMI, OMA-URI nonsense, you strip all that away, this is less than 5 minutes of work. The hardest part is making a decision over sort of how you want to filter the devices. We've been really specific with specific USBs. There is a real use case scenario for that, but it is very restrictive. And
has a very large administrative overhead.
Exactly. So realistically, what you would be doing is you would be filtering that back just a touch to potentially just specific brands of USBs that that you can get like large collections of or whatever. But this is a very, very real, very easy way that you can increase the security posture of your environment in less than 5 minutes.
I'd say it's probably about an hour's worth of work.
To understand, sure. To understand exactly
create
what you
XMLs
want.
and craft them how you need.
Yeah, I suppose. Depends on how good you are at writing XML, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, I think that's a pretty good place to stop this, Steve.
I think so too.
Awesome. So if you haven't had to play around with this stuff, I strongly recommend, as we said at the start of the video, and we'll always say, Links to the documentation and links to all of the things that you need to know how to do this stuff will be at the bottom in the description. Thanks for sticking around, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben.
Bye.
Bye.